Alrighty. Alright, so this ain't how I wanted to do this, but this is how we're going to do it, okay? So I didn't really give any notification to anybody that we were going to do a live video. And for some reason I like to do them live better than recorded. But we're going to do the shock, spring, preload, rule change for IMCA. Okay, so I thought, that after 4 or 5 hours last night that, it was kind of getting ironed out and everybody kind of come to a conclusion. But after this morning and the phone calls and text, I think there's somewhat of confusions, okay? So this is the interpretation as I understand it through text with Dave at IMCA, Brennan, and not all of them were me and Dave texting. So Dave has texting people, and the clarification of the rules is as such. Okay, so I don't have the rule in front of me. We was running out of time, so I got on real quick to do it. But the rule says that you run a 7-inch shock in the front and a 9-inch shock in the rear. Okay, on an IMCA modified Northern Sport Mod stock car and Southern. So on an IMCA modified, you can run a tether on both the left and the right front. Okay, but chain. So the chain in inspection at ride height must be free. So when you roll into tech and they check your right front chains, they must be free. If they are tight, you have preload against them. Okay? If your shocks, if you took the bolt out of your shock and your shock can't extend out, or you took the bolt out and the car goes up, you have preload against that shock. That is no longer legal. Okay? So if you take a shock and move the mount or move the shock to 18 inches and you put turns in it and that shock's tight, that is no longer legal. Okay? So you are not going to be able to preload your front springs against your shocks. That will not be legal. The car's got to come into tech, and basically they should be able to pick the front of the car up and the shock should extend out. Okay, if they don't, they're going to DQ you. Okay, so the rule is pretty simple. There is no valving. When it says the car cannot be pinned down by the shock, the interpretation of that is you can't. If you got to push the car down to bolt the shock on, you're going to be deemed illegal. Okay, you can have rebound in the shock. You can have any rebound in the shock you want. You can have any compression in the shock you want. Now the rule did say 7 in the fronts, 9s in the rear. Okay. Doesn't affect your extended load, preload on the left rear. It doesn't affect your right rear. If you're chain tight at ride height on the right rear, you're already screwing it up. So they're helping you because your right rear, I don't think, can have pressure on it either. So no chain, no shock can be preloaded at ride height. That's the basic rule. The one rule that I didn't see anybody commenting on, and the comments won't be great because it doesn't affect everybody in the stock car class, but it's the stock car rule that says the shock must be mounted outside of the spring. So to my knowledge, the only ones this really affects are the sniper cars, where their shock is mounted up through the center of the spring. Okay? If you read the rule, and the way I interpret that rule, ain't going to be allowed no more. Shock must be mounted outside. You can cut part of the bucket away for shock clearance, but it says you cannot mount the shock up through the middle. So stock car guys, the sniper guys, you might want to look that over. Is anybody responding with questions, Kayleen?
No.
Okay. Did we get a group of guys on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is the rules. If you guys got questions, start shooting them this way. We got 2 or 3 minutes. Basically, any valving you want is legal. The car can be tied down with shock valving. The car must be free at ride height. Okay, which means the car cannot be tethered down with the shocks. So if you pull a shock bolt out and the car goes up, you're going to be deemed illegal. If you jack the car up and the wheels don't fall out some, you're going to be deemed illegal. Okay, how IMCA you know, wants to tech this, it's going to be up to them. I don't know, but one of those two ways is, you know, it's going to be one of them two ways. You know, they're going to have to come up with some magic way to check it if it ain't one of them two ways. So I'm going to tag Dave in this video. Dave Brent, I'm going to tag you in this. If this is not correct, which I do believe based on other text messages he sent out that this is correct, then immediately let me know, Dave. We'll redo the video. We'll get it right. You can refer people to this, so you're not having to answer 1,000 questions. Guys, you're not preloading. If you're running a soft spring 350, you can't preload it against the chain. You can't preload it against the shock. So if you can get it preloaded and still have up travel in the car, then there you go. So some of the stuff the B-Mod guys are doing by raising the front ride heights still falls within the rules. You can raise the front ride heights. You can come to a load number by raising the front ride heights, but you still have to have out travel in the shock when you get there. So I think there was a question.
Yeah, on the hobby stock left rear shock, it can't extend when being unbolted. It's a question.
We can't.
So on the hobby stock left rear shock, it can't extend when being unbolted. So can it extend when being unbolted?
Yeah, it's going to have to extend.
Yeah.
If you put your so I'll be honest with you, I didn't read the hobby rule. Okay, the hobby stocks I think weren't initially thrown into that group of. But if you're on a hobby stock, okay, so a little different subject, but we'll answer the question for the guy. If you're on a hobby stock and you go back to your left rear and you take the bolt out of it and it doesn't extend out a good amount, you're in trouble. Okay, if it extends out an inch, you're in trouble. Not by the rules. Your car just ain't going to be that good. Okay, so you want your shock to extend out. The 4.5 inch rule for the stock car guys has been a battle. It's not that tough. The car's sitting on the ground, the car's sitting at ride height, the left rear must extend out 4.5 inches. Okay, if you got 2 inches of shaft showing on a 9-inch shock, it's going to extend out 4.5 inches. Same on the right rear. If you got 3 inches of shaft, you're fine. So that covers the rules. Okay, the goofy stuff you're trying to do with some of that other stuff is not what IMCA is doing. Is actually good for the car. So it's not a bad deal, guys. But it is, if you've got that preloaded deal perfected, and I've been leaning towards the preloaded deal, the softer spring and the preload in the soft spring creates activity in the shock, and that activity creates grip at the tire. So it has been good for the cars, so that you're not going to have it. So if you're going to want to make traction, now this is the part where you need to pay attention, because this is the good part. If you're going to make traction on a 500, 550, 600, 650 spring with no preload in it at ride height, and you're going to set it 7.5, 7 7/8, 8 inch, whatever your height is going to be for your ride height. Okay, you still have to have up travel in the car. If you're going to make grip in the slick, not in the moisture, in the slick, something is going to have to happen to that shock. So one of two things: your shock guy is going to fill you full of crap, or you're going to buy an SRT piston, okay? Because otherwise you're back to the same thing we've done. As it slicks off, it becomes more and more difficult to create activity. That 600-pound spring is never going to be like that 350, 400, 450 spring with preload on it. It's not going to be that way. So the grip value you get isn't coming from posture. It's coming from frequency of the spring, and that frequency making the shock work and move, and that's making grip in the tire. So it's not going to be the same. So something needs to bypass that fluid. SRT piston gets it done. That's. I don't know what everybody else is doing, but that is. I think we're the only one offering that piston. And generally just in our stuff, you know, it would fit in a Bilstein, but I've done them for some friends in AFCOs, but only on limited stuff, you know. So if you want to make grip in the tire, whether it's right front, right rear, and boys, we need to work on that right rear. Left rear, you got to be on an SRT. Okay, base valve's going to make it better, but not all base valves are created equal. So if you got brand X and you want to put a base valve on it and your car gets horrible because the racetrack's got a little rough in it, it's exactly what's going to happen. Okay, because that's how brand X tends to work with the base valve because of the design. Our stuff different. Okay, so maybe your shop guys got it figured out, maybe you don't. That's why we do what we do. You know, we've had, I feel like, very fortunate success on it. Any other questions? Okay, so we got to wrap it up early. If you guys have questions, there's a post on this post. Comment on it. So let's get this deal figured out, and it's not overly complicated, but let's get it figured out. And hey, let's go racing and win some races. Okay, guys, we might do a video tonight. I don't know. We had a special guest in the house last night from Iowa, so it cut into our video time, and then that led to lunch, supper. So, sorry. Food's very important. Feeds the mind, feeds the body, feeds the soul, feeds the mind, you know. So, all right, guys, got any questions, call 620-326-3152. J Neil on Facebook, BSB on Facebook. Leave a message on our, hey, go check out our BSB TV. Links on the BSB TV, FGTV button. There's a link there. It goes to our YouTube channel. Go check that out, jneil@youtube.com, blah, blah, blah. All these videos are going there, so that's where you get this information. All right, thanks, God. God bless you guys.